Greetings, everyone. I welcome you to the first episode of Conflicts and Contradictions. This is a free and introductory episode whose purpose is to introduce you to the kind of work I'm doing and seek your recommendations. Coming to the topic of the episode, have you ever wondered what is that one issue that hides beneath the surface of public finance, specifically relating to income tax and the spending of the collected revenue? An issue which gives birth to repeated problems that we face in this sphere. To answer this, I propose we explore the context of public finance, which we will do in this episode. And before we begin to do so, allow me to kindly share with you the importance of public finance within the sphere of political economy. And then we start to study the context of public finance. Public finance has not only entered in recent political debates. For example, some politicians in America are calling for as high as 70% tax. In addition to this, the topic, that is to say, the tax and the spending of the collected revenue, is a topic where the conflict of political and economic interests is most visible and important. Tax and the spending of the collected revenue is at the center stage of left versus right wing of politics, of socialist versus capitalist policies. It brings into mainstream discussion rather directly the issue of inequality, the conflict between haves and have-nots, and the contradiction between the ideologies that free market can lead to welfare of the masses against the one that public provision of certain goods and services improves the welfare of masses. Hence, it is a topic of utmost importance. Now, to begin exploring the context of tax and the spending of collected revenue, with an aim to identify that one most critical issue that hides beneath the surface but is the source of our repeated problems, we must ask who are the relevant individuals. Ordinarily, we have four categories: those who pay tax, those who receive the benefits of tax, those who decide about tax rates and the areas where the tax revenue is to be spent, and those who are the administrative officers collecting the taxes and catching the evasions. Identifying and understanding these individuals in their full detail is important because it is through their actions in the pursuit of their goals, subject to their conditions, that tax and the spending of the collected revenue is affected. And this perspective is critical. The conflicting goals and the conflicting conditions form the core of our issue. And one of the important conflicts in this setup is the marked inequality, a rather unfair one, which our world has. There are a few who earn comparatively a lot more, and a lot who earns comparatively lesser and lesser. As the facts go, top 1% can sometimes earn as much as all of the bottom 50% together. And the rich, in their accounting of income, find the direct tax or income tax as a cost, as a loss, something to be avoided, something to be averted. Whereas if tax revenue is spent on welfare, say on universal health care or free education, those at the middle or lower ends of the income distribution find it as a benefit. And naturally, they are in favor of increased taxes and their spending on such services. As a matter of fact, the rich can already afford all those services or goods which are otherwise provided publicly. And so it is natural that they find themselves as a net bearer of the cost of tax. Hence, when we have one group who wishes to evade taxes and lower them if possible legally, while the other who wishes to impose them and increase them legally, along with directing the spending of the collected revenue on welfare projects. And this marks the most important political conflict between the goals of two groups in our unfairly unequal society, between the rich and the poor, or the upper income group and middle or lower income groups. Moreover, for further understanding this conflict, we must understand the goals of the authority which chooses the tax rates and decides about spending of the collected revenue, since it is the elected government which to great extent determines the income tax rates and spending of collected revenue. Our questions ought to be: who are the individuals who now form the elected government, and what are their goals and agendas? But in our countries, the government is not formed of individuals from groups other than the two already in the conflict aforementioned, that is to say, the upper income and those at middle or lower income distribution. As a matter of fact, we observe that in our democracies, it is usually the rich or those financed by them who can bear the cost of an election campaign, and therefore it is also those who form the government. The election campaigns are costly, and in some instances there is neither any limitation regarding maximum of what can be spent on promotional campaigns and election campaigns, nor any restraint which restricts the sources of such funding, or any demand of revealing your source of funding. That is to say, you can spend as much as you can and arrange it from wherever you can. Neither there is any limit on spending nor any demand of revealing the source of funding. Hence, in this unbridled and non-transparent competitive scenario, as the competition rises, the demand of additional funds rises. As the demand of additional fund rises, only those who can afford such finance, either by themselves or by sponsorship, can run for an election campaign. Once this process takes place, the only candidates left are those belonging to or those who are representative of the wealthier, the rich, while naturally all those belonging to the lower ends of income or wealth distribution, even the middle ones, are filtered out. Hence, it is usually the rich or those financed by the rich who can afford large amounts of funding required for election campaigns, and consequently only they form the government. Accordingly, we have following 4 questions. If the authority to decide about income tax rate is in the hands of those who find tax as a disincentive, as a cost, as a loss, something to be avoided, something to be evaded? Will such individuals raise or enforce tax rates and take evasion seriously, or will they do the opposite? Alternatively, we may ask, under what conditions will such individuals raise or at least enforce the existing tax rates and eradicate evasion, or in the minimum mitigate evasion of tax? Moreover, if somehow they do enforce tax rates, where would they direct the spending of the collected revenue? Which activities and products will be financed or subsidized using the collected revenue, and to what extent, at what time, and in which area of the country? And so, to understand the central issue in public finance, we ought to answer these questions along with the other ones mentioned before. And while answering them, we should keep in mind following points. First, forming government in our democracies require running election campaign, which require massive finance. Second, this finance is possible either by your own money or by sponsorship from those who have such a large finance. As such, this finance is possible only by the rich or the wealthier upper group of the income distribution. Next, that there is an inequality in terms of income earned and also of wealth. That is to say, this finance is possible only by few people, a small group of people, and not by everyone. Finally, those who are rich find tax as a cost in their accounting of income, and their pursuit is only of increased income, increased profits. These questions should be the beginning point. However, once we answer these questions, we only begin to see the complexity of the critical but unattended issue of public finance, which gives birth to repeatedly new problems, and also the conflicts therein. To summarize this entire discussion in one question, we may ask this. Imagine there is a big, successful, privately owned pharmaceutical company which produces drugs for certain illnesses. Now, either one of the partners or owners run for an election campaign, or perhaps all of them sponsor a candidate to run for an election campaign. Because they have sufficient funding, they can do so. And imagine that this candidate wins the elections, sits in the parliament. The question is, will such an individual pursue for an increased income tax in general and controlling of the prices of medicine in particular, subsidizing them and in favor of universal health care? Or will such an individual pursue the goal of lowering the income tax in general and promoting freer market for medicine, so that the prices of medicine are set by the free market, which is against the universal health care and against controlling of the or lowering of the prices of medicine? The answer to this question will highlight that critical issue that remains unattended in public finance that needs our attention. With this question for your research, I would like to finish my introductory episode. Finally, before I take my leave, I wish to make a request, and that is that although this episode and coming few episodes are free and serve an introductory purpose, starting from next Monday, I will start systematic exploration of the area of public finance for the purpose of studying its context and competing ideas, identifying conflicts and contradictions therein. And in that, I require your participation. So I want you to come up with your questions. I want you to come up with some ideas that you want to share and ask me to explore them. Maybe you have an issue, maybe you can ask me to focus on a particular country, maybe you can come up with an article which we can discuss. I thank you again for listening to my first episode and take care. See you in 24 hours.